Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Connection Week 196. I feel like it's been forever since we've been here, even though it's only been 2 weeks. We only took 1 week off. Baruch Hashem, last Monday. Last week was a very, very full week. Baruch Hashem, we had a big simcha on Monday night for one of my kids, a big siyum, thank God. And then we went on our family trip. You've all heard me talk about family, or any of you who actually, there are a lot of new people here. So I'm going to say welcome to all the new women, but just catching everybody up. We've definitely talked a lot over the years, and you can find in the Coffee and Connection replay pages a lot about family time. And I remember one client last week was saying to me, "I'm sorry to bother you on your vacation." I'm like, "This is not vacation." I'm not gonna like family time and vacation are not the same thing. And so much of that really talks to so much of the kind of work that we do here, that mindset is everything. The way your intention going into something is going to make such a difference in how you experience it, how you feel about it, how you react to things, how you process it, how you like everything, right? Who you're being is going to be affected by the intention that you go into the situation with. So we had our family trip, thank God. There was a crazy heat wave here, so we had to change our plans a little bit, but thank God we had a very nice time, and I'm excited to be back on call. So this is my first Zoom. I just had my last my the call right before this. I had my first call since last Monday, so it's very nice to get back in here and come back to working with all of you and sharing with you and coaching you and being able to really dive into the things that can really make a difference for you. And I, even while I was away, got to start to really start to connect to women who are very interested in the intimacy, right? Because I was on the intimacy summit, and there were a lot of women who emailed me with their feedback, with their questions, looking to be added to get access to the Playful and Passionate Masterclass. And I'm so happy to have all of you here. And I'm excited to share more about this topic with you. Like I said in the email, this is, I think, such an important topic to talk about, something that is so important. And yet, sometimes because it's so important, because it's so deep, and I really believe that there's a piece here of, because intimacy is so holy and so powerful and so integral to our marriage, for that reason, because of its depth of holiness, it's also something that we have to be careful with. We have to talk about it in the proper way. We have to be respectful about it. And what's happened is that because we really honor the dignity of our marriage, the dignity of our sexuality, the dignity of our spouse and ourself, we end up not talking about it. And some like in for good reason, right? And at the same time, if we're not talking about it, if we're not sharing, if we're not asking questions, then we can just end up confused. Then we can end up unsure, like, what are we supposed to do? What's normal? What's healthy? I've learned over the years that so much of the frustration and the pain and the confusion that women are experiencing is so much because of the education, or I could say the lack of education. I remember even when I first got married, like, there were so many things that we had to figure out, and so many things that didn't make sense to me, and so many things that were surprising, and so many things that I had to kind of like learn anew. I went to college classes, and yet I there was so much that I didn't learn. And of course, there's so much that we can only learn through experience. And there's so many different types of experiences that we can have. Every person is different. Again, and even in every stage of life, we can go through different things. And that's why it is so important to have safe, open spaces to talk about these things in a way that is safe, in a way that is holy, in a way that is protected, in a way that it is being done in a dignified way, and yet without losing the ability to talk authentically, to talk vulnerably, to talk honestly, to talk openly. If we can't talk openly about it, then how are we going to know what's going on? How are we going to know what we should and shouldn't do? How are we supposed to know what is and isn't normal? How are we supposed to know what, like, even just what we don't know? We can't know what we don't know, right? We talk about that all the time, like, with all our limiting beliefs and all of our So everything that's in our blind spots, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that comes up so much in in the realm of sexuality, intimacy, and the truth is I'll talk about not just about physical intimacy, but emotional intimacy. We have so much expectations, so many ideas of what we think intimacy is supposed to be about, what we think marriage is supposed to be about, and not even just talking about physical intimacy, even emotional intimacy. We may be very hesitant, and I understand, rightfully so. People are very judgmental, even if they're struggling in their marriage. When they hear other people are struggling, they'll be like, "Oh, what's going on with them?" Because we all think that there's like a certain way that a marriage is supposed to look, right? There's certain ways that people should be dealing with each other. Even I was saying I was on family time and I've been thinking a lot about this idea that we even have this like idealistic vision like parents and children should always be speaking to each other calmly and pleasantly and everything should always be perfect. And it's like, where is this coming from? And what happens when you meet with real life where like there's issues and struggles and sometimes there needs to be some, like we need to say something that needs to be said and sometimes a kid's upset about something and sometimes we need to be a little bit more forceful about something, right? Like discipline. And yet at the same time we also sometimes have to be understanding of a child who's not in an ideal state. Like there's so much expectations of everything being so picture perfect that it's very difficult to actually like deal with the realities of what's going on. Is this resonating with all of you? Please put in the chat yes, no. This is what like are you with me? Are you not with me? I would so love to hear. And just going back to all the different pieces of marriage, it's important to know that so much of what we experience as what we think is a problem, what we think isn't okay, what we think is bad or wrong, I'm broken, he's broken, our marriage is broken, helpless, hopeless, all of that stuff, how much I invite you to consider what if the challenges, not that the challenges aren't real, right? The challenges are real. I'm never going to sit here, not standing. I'm never going to sit here and say, no, it's nothing. It's okay. Everybody's dealing with it. No, our challenges are real. And at the same time, if the challenges are normal, if the challenges are a result of things that we don't know or we don't realize, if the challenges are a result of reality that you and your husband are imperfect people, then you can be it's that means that there's solutions. It means that you can learn something that you don't know. It means you can have understanding of something you didn't have understanding of. It means that you can say, okay, here's a challenge. How do I deal with this challenge? And that comes up inside the bedroom and outside of the bedroom, and it's all connected. It's all connected. And there's so much to dive into on this topic. I'm going to, like I said, I've been getting some questions that are being sent to me specifically about intimacy, and I'm so happy to answer them because, like I said, it's so important to have a safe space to talk about these questions. I read these questions, I want to tell you every single question. I open the email, I read the question, and I'm like, Baruch Hashem, she's asking this question. I'm so happy that this question is being asked. I'm so happy that you even have that you feel safe asking the question. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me. And also that, it's so it allows me to feel a sense of like hope that you know what there's an acknowledgement like wait, let me ask about this. I don't just have to suffer with this. I don't just have to live in silence with this. Let me ask the question. So I'm going to answer these questions. I will share that what some of the questions that I'm getting are where can I learn more about this? Where can I dive deeper into this? So I'm just going to say, as I'm answering the questions, I do have a program that goes even deeper into these topics: intimacy, physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, dealing with the challenges that come up, dealing with our misconceptions, being able to connect even when we don't feel like it, being able to build a more intimate connecting relationship, even if our husband isn't interested, or even if we're full of resentment, or even if it feels like we're just broken and helpless. I do have more on that. I'm going to, right now, it's a little bit, I'm just like packaging it in a way that I feel will be most helpful. I've been working on that all summer, and Be'ezrat Hashem, I will be making it available soon. If you'd like, I will share with you at the end how you can already get on a wait list to find out more about that program. Some of you may have heard me talk about it in the past. I'm excited for it to just get more out there because, as I am working on it, I've been listening to it again. And thank God, it's so good. Like it has so much. so many important pieces of information and content and understanding of ideas that are really game changing in a marriage. They really make a difference between disconnection and hurt and pain and frustration and the ability to connect with each other. So, let me answer some of the questions that came in. I'm going to get to as many of them as I can. I will tell you that we will continue this topic. If I don't get to your question this week, it doesn't mean I'm not going to answer it. It just may mean that, please God, I will answer it in a coming week. Okay. So you can also send in more questions if you have them, and I'm happy to answer them. So let me answer the first one that I see here. I heard your beautiful interview on the intimacy summit, and I had one question on something you said. You said women are like escalators and men are like elevators. What happens if I feel the peak for much shorter than my husband? Are there tips or tricks to help me? Yes. So the first thing I want to say, and this came up in a few questions, is that we have to remember and that we have to remember that even when we make generalizations about men and women, which we'll usually make to help us understand situations, we also have to understand that no one fits in 100% to any type of stereotype, right? So there may be times that you feel that you're the elevator, or there may be times in your life where, like, your husband, you're both escalators, or you're both elevators, or again, it may be switched between the two of you. And this came up a lot. Women asking questions like, wait, I'm more the man in the way more people like people usually talk about it. And that's totally normal. That totally happens. I have another question on that. So I just wanted to start out with that kind of like disclaimer that, like, it does, if you hear everyone talking about, oh, men are always more in the mood than women. And you're like, I'm more in the mood than my husband. Totally normal. That happens. You're right. It doesn't happen as often. There is a stereotype for a reason, but it also is not abnormal to have it happen the other way. And I will tell you, I think it's a very interesting thing. I don't understand why this is so, but I have seen in all my years of coaching couples, coaching women in their relationship, that I, every time I coach a woman who has a very high libido, right? She's very interested in sex. She likes it all the time, or she wants it very often. She's married to a man who wants it less. She's married to a man who's like, maybe once a week, whatever. Like, it's so interesting how there's, it's like almost always completely, she turns into the way most women feel their husbands are, and her husband is more like the other women that I'm coaching are, right? So when I coach in a group, I usually find that the women who are relating more to what the women are sharing about their husbands, that woman will always say that her husband, wow, I sound like your husband and your husband sounds like, no, I sound like your husband and you sound like my husband, right? So it's very interesting how that happens. What I will say though is that if we think about it practically and logically, and this is such an important point in relationships, since no two people are ever going to be exactly the same on anything, and definitely not everything, you're always going to have one person in the relationship who wants it more or less than the other. Always. I say the same thing about, like, money, right? Like, where they say, like, some people are spenders and some people are savers. Well, you're never going to have two people who are exactly in the same place of, like, spender or saver, which means that one of you will always be more of a spender than the other will always be more of a saver. Even if you were married, even if the spender was married to somebody else, they'd be considered a saver because that person is way more of a spender. Is this making sense to everyone? I hope I'm explaining this well. Meaning, in every relationship, you're going to have the person who wants it more and the person who wants it less. You're always going to have the person who feels it more than who feels like they stay in that high more than the other person. It doesn't matter where they would fall, in the spectrum of other people. And again, we don't talk to other people as much, so we don't even know where they would like what that would mean. But is that um what we do know is that it's okay if you find yourself in the other, like, position, so to speak, and we can talk about what to do in that situation. But definitely not to feel like there's anything wrong with you, because there isn't. It's good and healthy to feel the way you feel. And also, there's nothing wrong with you that your husband doesn't feel that way, right? As you can hear from all the women who feel that way, it's not about their husbands, it's about their own physical self. Okay. So, going into the question of what if I don't feel that peak as long as I'd like to? So this can come out in a few different ways, and this is why it's so powerful to really be able to be aware of and to feel a sense of confidence and a sense of acceptance about your body. It's something I go very into in my intimacy program. It's very important to have a sense of, let me see, what am I feeling and what am I experiencing, and what would allow me to slow it down? Or maybe I enjoy it this way. Or how would I enjoy it differently? Like just getting curious with yourself in like what your experience is. And for some women, they feel the peak very intensely, so they need to slow it down so they can enjoy it more. And some women really like that peak. They like to feel it very intensely. If you are looking to feel it in a bit of a slower way, some things that can be very helpful is some deep breathing, right? So giving yourself like some deep breathing to calm your body as it's happening. So it kind of slows down the pleasure, it slows down the peak of the pleasure. And you can also really tune into the pleasure so that you really allow yourself to experience it. That can be helpful as well. And again, just as I said before, to really bring acceptance and pleasure to what you do experience, so that you don't see it as less than, you don't see it as, oh, I'm missing out. It's the like it is what you experience, and to enjoy it, while you can also be curious, like, is there something I can do to experience in a less intense, but like you said, more like experiencing it for a longer amount of time. Sometimes that might mean also allowing yourself, allowing what's creating the pleasure to be a little bit less intense, right? Maybe using a lighter touch, right? If your husband can use a lighter touch, or if you can do things slower, to just kind of like kind of drag, like what's not drag it out. What's it like what's the word I'm looking for? Like on the computer when you like pull things apart from each other, right? To slow it down in that way. Okay. So let me know your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear. Um, Here we have another question. Thank you for your amazing interview. I really loved everything I had to say. I'm wondering if this is an issue that other people have. Sometimes, as soon as I'm interested and start to get intimate, my mind goes into a million places. Like all the thoughts of the day come rushing in. What is a practical way to deal with this? I'm also wondering what a couple can do when they don't have the on and off Nida and Tahara. How can they navigate always being on? Thank you so much. Okay, I love these questions. I want you to know first and foremost that that is very normal. It's very normal for the mind to suddenly like be thinking of a million other things. It could be for many different reasons. One could be that we don't notice some women. I actually always thought this is the way everyone's mind work, and now I found out it's not. But that we don't even necessarily realize that some people's brains are constantly thinking and speaking to them, right? Constantly like on a roll. And when you're in your busyness of the day, you don't even notice it. You just think like, yeah, okay, like your brain's just buzzing along with everything else. When you get into bed and everything's quieter and now you want to focus on your husband and on the intimacy, suddenly you hear your brain. It's always was like that. You just didn't hear it before because there was so much else going on around you. That's one possibility. Another possibility is because when you get into bed, it's relaxing, it allows you all those thoughts to rush in that haven't been there all day. And it could possibly be another reason why it's so important to be tuned in and curious with ourselves. It may be that there's a bit of a sense of um what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost like a resistance. Like maybe there's a part of you that has a bit of a fear of the intimacy or a fear of pleasure. Maybe a part of you is like resist as much as you want the intimacy, is a little bit scared of it, right? That can happen a lot. We can have a fear of intimacy. We can have a fear of pleasure. We can have a fear of what am I going to experience and what's it going to be like, because a lot of intimacy, both in the bedroom and out of it, is about letting go and seeing what's going to happen. What am I going to experience? It's not going to look and feel exactly the way we think it's going to, or we may not know exactly what it's going to feel like. And so there may be a bit of fear of letting go. These are just some possibilities, and I hope that that can, either you'll resonate with one, or it can have you kind of thinking like, well, what is causing all of those thoughts? And what you can do again is take some deep breaths. We talk a lot about deep breathing. Take a lot of deep breaths and remind yourself you can think about that, and tell yourself when you're going to think about that. I'm going to think about that after we're done. I'm going to think about that tomorrow. Some people also like to take some time beforehand to write things down, make a list so it's out of their head and on a piece of paper, right? That can also be helpful. It can also sometimes be helpful to have a little bit of wine, or put on some light music, or to do something that helps you relax beforehand. All of that could be very helpful. In terms of the not having the Nida and Tahara cycle, I love this topic. I think it's very important to know that there's so much here. Very often we are taught Nida as a I have such a thing about this. Nida can often be taught as like a shalom bayit tool. Like, this is how you keep connection in your marriage. This is how you keep intimacy. This is how you keep freshness in your marriage. But there's many times, and for some people it doesn't work that way. For some people it does work and it's great. And for some people it's very difficult for them. Without the physical intimacy, they struggle, and then they think there's something wrong with them because they're supposed to be building up this emotional intimacy, and like, is something wrong with me? No, nothing's wrong with you. Physical intimacy is very important. And it's very normal and okay and healthy to struggle during NIDA. And then there are also many times in women's lives when they're not in NIDA. There is no NIDA cycle. Whether you're pregnant, nursing, on some type, on a birth control or IUD that doesn't make you a NIDA, then you go through menopause. Very normal to not have it. And that's why what we really invite you to lean into, and this is something I love talking about, is the idea of being able to lean into the safety and the feeling of connection that comes from a steady, like, intimacy being something that's steady in your life, while also knowing how to build passion through curiosity, right? This is a very cool topic that we have two aspects of marriage that we often think go together: love and passion. And the truth is that they are in some ways opposites, because love is built on safety and feeling safe and known, and passion is built on the unknown, the unexpected, the newness. And does that mean our marriages are doomed the longer we're married? No, it doesn't. As long as, instead of like, just thinking, oh, I know this person already. Oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. Oh, I know what he's going to say. Instead of feeling, this sense of like knowingness already, when we lean into our marriage with a sense of curiosity, right? What can how can I keep learning about this person? What is he going to say next, right? What else could we do? What else can we experience? Um, what's he like in this decade of our lives, right? Knowing that, like, we're constantly growing and keeping, keep getting to know each other. Oh, that is where passion is possible. That's actually where love gets even deeper, because you actually get to know the person even more and more and more, while you keep realizing the more you know them, the more there is to know about them. And that curiosity, which is the key to a healthy, happy marriage, allows your love and your passion to grow. So, like I said, I talk a lot more about this in my intimacy program, which is called Absolutely Irresistible. And I'm going to share with you how you can already get on the wait list of that. You can either, and I'll talk a lot more about that, but I'm going to jump into a few more questions in the coming week. So you can either go to hanadeutsch.com/connection. Here, I'll actually just post it in the chat, because it's a little bit, I probably should. Uh-oh, hold on. I just did the wrong thing. You can either, here you go to hanadeutsch.com/connection dash waitlist, or you can also send an email to intimacy and connection waitlist at robot.zapier.com if you don't have the internet. the ability to click. I'm going to go to one more question that came in over the Zoom here. You taught us that it's okay to say no to sex, but what happens if I know that when I say no to my husband, it it does do things he shouldn't be doing and doesn't want to do? It's happened in the past, so I know it for a fact. That's such an important question, and that's where it's really important, and I really want to I'll give as much as I can in just our last minute here together. But what's really important in all aspects of marriage is to remember that while the two of you are connected and while you care about your husband, it's also important to remember that neither of you are actually responsible for each other's choices. This is very important in all aspects of marriage because without this clarity and without this sense of health, it's really a boundary. Without a sense of healthy boundaries, we can end up with feeling a lot of resentment in our relationship. We can end up feeling a heavy load of responsibility, and also putting responsibility for ourselves on our husbands and putting responsibility for our husbands on ourselves. We may feel responsible for everything, and it creates a lot of resentment, a lot of frustration, which is actually the worst thing for our libido, right? The worst thing for desire, the worst thing for actually liking our husbands, let alone loving him and wanting him, is any form of resentment against them. And it's so, therefore, very important for you to know that your husband's choices are 100% his choices. Right? The choices that he makes are his choices. You cannot take responsibility for them. Because again, that would mean to say that every time he wants to be with you, you have to be with him, even if you don't want to. Well, what does he do when you're in Nida? What if he was just with you and now he wants to be with you again? What if you just gave birth? What if you're not home? What if you were just with him the day before and you're in pain or you're exhausted or you're not feeling well? Are you saying that all of that, like, you have to be with him, otherwise it's your responsibility, the choices that he makes? The truth is, your husband is a grown man, and this is actually very respectful. I'm being very respectful here of your husband, and I invite us to all be very respectful of our husbands. That our husbands are grown men, our husbands are adults, and their choices are 100% theirs. Now, of course, any woman could take this to an extreme. If you're never with your husband, if you've totally cut your husband off from sex, well, that would there's something to talk about there, right? It's important to look at that. It's important to get curious with that. It's important to see what can be done there. Of course, I'm talking about and I know there are situations where that happens, and I'm not giving blanket statements here. What I'm saying is that it's important to have a sense of letting your husband own his own choices, giving your husband to be responsible for his choices. Okay? Your husband is responsible for his choices. And with that, you can be understanding, you can be empathetic, you can be in a sense of, I want to be with him when it's important to him. And at the same time, also making sure that you're not making yourself feel obligated, responsible, like you're guilty if he makes those kinds of choices. Because, like I said, he could make those choices in times where you can't be with him. Like he has to be responsible for his choices. Is this resonating? Let me know. And at the same time, to know that, um, yeah, his choices are his to make. And you can also like get curious with yourself, like what's coming up for me, what has me want to be with him, when is it that I don't want to be with him. It is important to know that you could say no for exactly that reason. If we don't feel, also if you always have that sense of I can't say no, then he doesn't have to take responsibility for his actions because he can just say, "It was your fault," right? And when you're in a place of you make like this is your choice and it's a respect piece, right? I'm respecting him as an adult. Respecting him to make his own choices. I'm respecting him to, and yes, we all have our struggles and our challenges, and we're not looking and we're not beating them up and we're not getting upset at them. It's his choices and we're trusting them to make their choices. Then you get to step into a place where you can actually tune into, what do I want? When do I want to be with him? How can I enjoy this? You can let go of that sense of burden and responsibility that can actually allow you to feel more of a desire to say yes. Does that resonate? Let me know your thoughts on that, and then we will I want to make sure before I close up that that answer has given some clarity and insight. We can definitely, there's definitely a lot more to say, but there that is a very important thing to say as well. Um, Okay, so we definitely have a lot more questions. So we will definitely continue this topic next week. Before we close off, just let me know, what are you taking away from this call? What's made a difference for you? And if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to answer them. Um, Yes, it does, but it's still hard to feel fully free. But thanks, you're so welcome. And just remember, if you've been feeling that sense of responsibility for so long, it can be hard to let it go because your brain is still saying, you're responsible, you're responsible. Maybe you were taught that you're responsible. So it's very important to acknowledge that belief and then keep reminding yourself of the truth. Acknowledge yourself and remind yourself that it's not serving anyone for you to believe that. It's just creating less desire and less of a sense of personal responsibility and personal tuning into our feelings on both sides. Okay. Okay, ladies. So I'm glad to hear that this was helpful for you. Keep your questions coming, keep your comments coming. I look forward to connecting with you next week, Be'ezrat Hashem. And until then, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.